Nintendo just had their 84th shareholders meeting recently, and I read through some of the questions asked, and there's definitely some interesting changes at Nintendo. There's a lot of talk of high-profile people retiring, including Miyamoto himself. Like who's gonna control the franchises, like what new IPs are gonna be introduced. Like again, there's a lot of like very real concerns going into like the next 5 years or so, right? But it's interesting kind of looking at what the masses are saying versus like what the actual concerns are, because if you really look at what like the online gaming community is saying, like they'll try to tell you that like, oh man, Mario and Zelda is not popular anymore, everything's falling off, they're not making new IPs, Switch sales are going down, yada yada. Like again, it was bizarre, going and seeing like how strong 2023 was, from a lineup perspective, seeing Tears of the Kingdom, break new records, seeing Mario Wonder be as big of a hit as it was, and seeing people try to do this thing where they're just sitting there just being like, well, nobody's talking about it. Like they still do this even today, even though we're constantly talking about Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Wonder, and have been since the games came out, right? It's just a cope, essentially, to downplay the long-term success and relevancy of these games, And in this shareholders meeting, someone actually talked about Super Mario Bros. Wonder directly, right? This individual came out and was just like, why did it take so long to make a new 2D Mario game? And of course, like Nintendo came out and they started talking about, all the different Mario games they've produced over the past decade, and that encompasses a wide range of products. You have Mario 3D World, you have Odyssey, you have like the Mario Party games. Again, you have this wide range of of the Mario series that really demonstrates just how flexible the IP is. Now, those like Sean Malmstrom looked at this statement and tried making this weird conspiracy that like, Nintendo just hates 2D Mario. But it's interesting because these people immediately came out and tried to say that 2D Mario Wonder was not very popular or successful because no one was talking about it. And during an interview question where they were specifically talking about Mario Wonder. That's right. Mario Wonder was brought up by the shareholder who was asking questions about the game and 2D Mario in general, right? Doesn't that like speak volumes as to how popular and iconic 2D Mario actually is, where shareholders will address it, by name, and address the game by name? Like again, this goes beyond like the simple high sales and the high critical acclaim, like the enduring popularity of Mario Wonder, right? Like this was absolutely the biggest release for Nintendo last year, right? And there's been this very stubborn refusal from the gaming community to kind of acknowledge it. Like I remember when people like Max Dude were trying to tell us that like, oh, this is a minor release, the final game on Nintendo Switch before they release the Switch. Like it was a cope then, and it's especially sad now seeing people continue this narrative that Mario Wonder isn't popular or successful, because it obviously is. It's obviously a huge deal and will continue to sell units for years to come. I think people are really underestimating just how well this game is going to do. Just how much it's going to sell on Switch going into like the next couple of years. How much like a re-release will do. Like again, just look at Skyward Sword HD. Like the re-release sold about as much as the original release did. I think Tropical Freeze on Switch has sold more than the Wii U release, right? Like when you look at like the long-term relevancy and popularity of these Nintendo games, you really get a sense of like what's actually going on here. Nintendo does not need to release new sequels of established content like regularly, because people are constantly buying the games, they're constantly playing the games, they're experiencing the games, and they don't necessarily like get through everything right away, right? We've seen this a lot with Tears of the Kingdom specifically, where like a lot of content is just it takes a long time to get through these games, essentially. So it doesn't make sense to put out a new 2D Mario every year, especially in this day and age where like technology is stagnant and they have to come up with new interesting mechanics every single time. Like again, There's a reason games are taking so much longer to make because they're putting so much more into it. They look better. They have way more content than they used to. Like the cope that people have, like in regards to this, that like, oh, they used to put out a new one of these games every year. Yeah, when that the when these games were like significantly smaller and they can be put together by like a handful of people. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to like not be just throwing out Mario Wonder games near constantly, simply because like, if they put out Mario Wonder games constantly, new 2D Mario games, they wouldn't be able to innovate and they wouldn't be able to do new things. With New Super Mario Bros. In particular, like again, 4 games in 6 years, that did feel like it was too much. Now, I would argue that like the quality didn't dip, but there was definitely a narrative established that like that was true, right? And I will always argue against that, right? New Super Mario Bros. Is no different than Mario Wonder in a lot of ways. It's a fantastic experience that the ignorant masses have traditionally tried to downplay, but um, like looking at just the obsessive need for the gaming community to try and write off like everything Nintendo is doing right now, it's really interesting seeing them try and say that like Mario Wonder is disappointing because like again, what was the main complaint about New Super Mario Bros. Wonder? The visual style, right? The tone, like the Mario Wonder like really did something completely new and different, and it's gone completely unappreciated for those people who have been insisting for the past decade or so that like 2D Mario is stagnant or doesn't get enough entries. Like I don't know a single person who's a bigger shill for 2D Mario game than Sean Malmstrom, and yet he attacked Wonder. Same with Mike Matei, right? Like so many of these people who like posit themselves as like hardcore Mario fans rejected Mario Wonder for really petty, inconsequential reasons. Why? Because it's not as cool and badass as it was when you were 10. Like it's really sad to see these grown men spurg out over like 2D Mario games, but it's been a consistent thing for forever, and I do think it's not going to last. Like again, they it's a lot like Tears of the Kingdom in that respect, where they introduced the narrative. They introduced this idea that like, oh, nobody's talking about the game, but it's observably not true. Like I think what's actually happening is that the people who are complaining about these games simply are making no effort to engage with fans of the game. That fans of the game simply just aren't talking about the game online anyway, right? That we're all offline doing things in real life, like not wanting to be spoiled on this product. That was something I noticed with Tears of the Kingdom, is that like talking about the game really ruined the experience for me because someone told me where the Master Sword was. I kind of regret playing Tears of the Kingdom because I don't streaming Tears of the Kingdom because I don't have the experience of discovering the Master Sword for the first time, right? Again, like people are talking about these games. People are playing these games, but it's so much more genuine and it's so much more real than what people do with like Baldur's Gate 3 or Elden Ring, where all anybody does is talk about the critical acclaim or the awards or how high the player counts are on Steam or how many people are playing it on Twitch, and not anything real, right? Like not anything like really solid, genuine, just what makes the game great. And I do think this is why Nintendo is stomping the competition right now, is that like these people are completely out of touch with what makes gaming great. It's not about politics, it's not about hardware specs, it's about high quality video games. And Nintendo is the only company that consistently produces great games that gets people excited every time they reveal them in a Nintendo Direct.